All right, everyone, today we're going to jump into something that will absolutely define your careers, motivation. Because let's face it, as future leaders, you're going to learn real fast that motivation is the engine that drives any successful team. Figuring out how to build it, and just as important, how to keep it going, well, that's one of the most critical skills you'll ever develop. So let's dive in.
We've all seen this, right? Maybe you've even felt it yourself. You see someone who is brilliant, hardworking, totally capable. They start off on fire, but then over time, that spark just kind of fades. Why? Why does that happen? That's the big question we're going to unpack. Because here's the secret. As a manager, your job isn't really to motivate people. It's to create an environment where they can't help but motivate themselves.
And this is what happens when things go wrong. It's a dangerous chain reaction. It all starts with a simple, unsatisfied need. That need then boils over into tension and frustration. And what do we do when we're frustrated? We look for a way out, right? A way to relieve that pressure. And if a positive path isn't available, it can spiral into some really negative behaviors. People stop showing up, they get aggressive, or they just completely withdraw. Your job as a great manager is to step in and break this chain before it even gets started.
So how do you do that? How do you interrupt that cycle? Well, before you can act, you have to diagnose the problem. See, the best managers, they don't just throw random solutions at the wall to see what sticks. No, they first take the time to really understand the why behind what's happening. So we're going to look at 3 powerful lenses, if you will, to help you do just that.
So first up is Alderfer's ERG theory. It keeps things nice and simple by boiling down all our human needs into just 3 buckets. E is for existence, that's your basic stuff. Salary, safe working conditions. R is for relatedness, our need to connect with other people, to have good relationships. And G is for growth, that deep down desire we all have to learn new things and develop as a person.
Now, what's really cool about this is how it's different from Maslow's pyramid, which I'm sure you've all seen. Alderfer's theory is way more flexible. It says you don't have to climb up a ladder one step at a time. And, this is the key part, it introduces this idea of frustration regression. Think about it. If an employee is hitting a wall trying to get that big promotion, that's a growth need, right? They might get so frustrated that they just fall back and start obsessing over something else, like office politics or their paycheck.
Okay, let's switch to our second lens. This one looks at motivation through the frame of, well, just growing up. Argyris's idea is that all of us are on a natural journey. As we develop, our psychological needs evolve, moving from a state of immaturity to one of maturity.
And you can see that whole journey laid out right here. We go from being passive to active, from needing others to being independent, from thinking about today to planning for the long haul. So here's the kicker for you as a manager. If you take a mature, independent, long-term thinking employee and you micromanage them, treating them like they're still at the beginning of this path, you are basically guaranteeing that they'll check out. It's a motivation killer.
All right, our third and final diagnostic lens is McClelland's acquired needs theory. And the most important word on this slide is acquired. McClelland says our biggest motivators aren't things we're born with. This is huge because it means they are learned, they are shaped by our culture and our life experiences. And he focuses on 3 big ones: achievement, power, and affiliation.
First, you've got the need for achievement, or NACH for short. These are the people who are just driven by the challenge itself. They love setting tough but realistic goals for themselves. For them, cracking the puzzle, building the better mousetrap, that's the real reward. The money, that's just a nice bonus.
This quote from Bob Crane, an inventor, is just a perfect example of this in the wild. His entire focus is on making a better product, on hitting his goal. The paycheck is an afterthought. That is the need for achievement in its purest form.
Next up is the need for power, or N-power. And look, this doesn't have to be a bad thing, right? We're not talking about being a dictator. This is about the desire to have an impact, to influence things, to be responsible for outcomes. These are the folks who actually thrive in competitive situations and love being in charge.
And last but not least, the need for affiliation, or AFNAF. You know these people. They're motivated by strong personal bonds. They thrive in cooperative, friendly team environments. The only thing for a manager to watch out for here is making sure that the desire for everyone to like them doesn't get in the way of making a tough but necessary call when it's needed. Okay, so we've got our diagnostic lenses. We can see the why. Now let's pivot to the how. Think of this next part as your manager's toolkit, the actual practical strategies you can pull out to start building that self-motivating environment we talked about.
And the first tool, honestly, the most important one, is what's going on right between your own ears, your mindset. A Theory X manager basically believes people are lazy and you have to watch them like a hawk. But a Theory Y manager, they believe people want to do a good job and will rise to the occasion if you trust them. And here's the wild part. Whichever one you believe, you're probably going to be right. Your assumptions literally shape your team's reality.
A really powerful strategy is something called job enrichment. Now, this sounds kind of academic, but the idea is simple. It's not about piling on more tasks. It's about fundamentally redesigning a job to make the work itself more engaging, more interesting, and more rewarding.
So how do we actually do that? Well, Hertzberg's theory gives us the perfect map. He split things into two groups. On the left, you've got hygiene factors. Think salary, company policy, working conditions. Think of these like your Wi-Fi. When it's not working, you're super annoyed. But when it is working, you don't even think about it. Fixing these things doesn't make people motivated, it just stops them from being unmotivated. The real magic, the stuff that gets people fired up, is all on the right side, the motivators. Achievement, recognition, responsibility.
And this is so cool because it ties perfectly back to Maslow's pyramid. Those hygiene factors, they take care of the stuff at the bottom of the pyramid, our basic needs for security and belonging. But to get people to the top, to really unlock their potential and help them feel a sense of self-actualization, you have to focus on the motivating factors. You have to focus on the work itself.
Here's another big one. Flex time. I mean, who doesn't love having a little more control over their own schedule? When you give people autonomy, it's a huge sign of trust. And as you can see, the benefits are pretty clear. Better morale, people are on time more, and production often goes up. Sure, there are challenges, but the core idea is simple. When you show people you trust them with their time, that trust is a massive motivator.
Next up is behavior modification. Now, this is built on a super simple but really powerful idea called the law of effect. All it means is that behavior that gets rewarded tends to get repeated, and behavior that gets punished, well, it tends to go away. It's all about managing the consequences of people's actions. But to make this work, you gotta follow a few key rules. First, rewards always beat punishment. You want to focus on reinforcing the good stuff. Second, your feedback has to be crystal clear, and it has to be fast. And finally, you have to be consistent every single time. That's how people learn the clear link between what they do and the outcome.
Okay, theory is one thing, but let's see how all of this shakes out in the real world, with real stakes. We're going to look at a company that absolutely has to get this right to even compete.
And that company is Jaguar Land Rover. I mean, think about it. To build the kinds of cars they build, you need the best of the best engineers on the planet. This is a high-stakes motivation game. So where do they start? Right here, with a competitive salary. This number, that's a classic hygiene factor, right? It's essential. It gets talented people in the door, and it stops them from saying no right away. But Jaguar Land Rover knows that a paycheck isn't what makes a brilliant engineer stay up all night solving a complex problem. So what do? The moment someone is hired, they hit them with the motivators. First, every new recruit gets a buddy to show them the ropes. Boom, that's the relatedness need, taken care of. Then, they're put into this intense program where the bar is set incredibly high from day one. That taps right into their need for achievement, for responsibility, for growth. See how it works? They handle the hygiene factors, but they win the war for talent with the motivators.
And that brings it all full circle, right back to you. You've seen the lenses to diagnose the problem, you've got the tools to start building a solution, you know the difference between just keeping people from being unhappy and actually firing them up. So the final question is really the only one that matters. When it's your turn, when you're the one leading the team, what choices are you going to make? What kind of motivational environment are you going to build?